Hi guys, Logan here. Welcome to week 2 of Debates in Politics. And this week we discuss political systems, right? Now, political systems can sound like a complicated thing, but they're actually not so complicated. Okay, so I lied. They are pretty complicated things. But once you understand them, they're pretty simple. And they're very interesting and they're very, full of debates, right? So what is a political system? Now, a system is just a way to govern, a way to make decisions, right? So if you have many different people, you need to have a way which all those people can decide. For example, like in your house, how do you decide what you're going to have for dinner, right? So if it's, father who decides all the time, father decides today I want to have kimchi cake for dinner, then father gets kimchi cake. Now that would be an authoritarian system, like a monarchy or a dictatorship, because whatever I want goes. Now, if the decision is good and everybody enjoys kimchi cake and you're happy to have it every day, then that system is very efficient, right? So because you don't waste a lot of time discussing and you trust the leader to make the right decisions all the time. And in that case, everybody moves along very quickly, you get a lot of things done, it's a very, very efficient system, and that's on the far side of the political spectrum. On the other side is when everybody decides together. So maybe people don't like kimchi cake, or maybe not every day for dinner, and especially not for dinner. So maybe you have a vote, right? So everyone decides, has a discussion about what to have. And this is great because people can talk, but sometimes this can also lead to disagreements. What if 5 people want 5 different things? Then how do you decide which thing you want? And if people decide against the leader, then the leader has to give up these things, or give up the right or the responsibility of doing it. If everybody decides, you want to have goose stuffed with cheese for dinner, that's what the kids want, but mom decides, I don't want to cook this, then is it possible for you to force her to do it? So maybe people need to have different powers or different powers based on their responsibility, right? So if I'm expected to do more, then maybe I need to have a larger say. So this is like a democracy where everybody gets to vote, but in that democracy, you also need to take into account what people are voting for, who is voting, and you need to create a system of democracy that can function, right? So even in a democracy, it's hard for me to have elections every day, or even every year, or even every month, because if I do that, then I'm going to spend a lot of time and effort doing this, and each time I'm going to be asking questions over and over and over again, right? So that could create a lot of confusion. So a political system, an efficient political system, is one that takes into account what people want, right? That represents the wishes of most people most of the time, yet can be pretty efficient, can get the job done, doesn't spend too much time getting information and getting people to decide, but also spends enough time doing that so that the people who are chosen, that the decisions that are made are effective and are decisions that represent everyone, right? It's like being in a company or being in a team, and if you spend all your time having meetings about what we should be doing, then you don't have enough time to spend actually doing those things. Yet, if you don't have the meetings, then why are we doing these things? And if people don't agree on the things that you're doing, maybe it's not going to work out so well, right? Or maybe you'll end up doing the wrong things, okay? So that's basically it, actually. A political system is a way to make decisions. Every organization, a family, a company, a school, a team of 4 needs to have this kind of system, right? If you don't have that system, it could lead to conflicts and people don't agree with the decision that's being made. Now, if you think about a country, and a country is much bigger, then it's going to be far more complex because you have many different people in there, right? And it's important to represent them as much as you can, right? So that's what this week is about. Different types of political systems and how do we create the system that has the best balance. Now, this debate in particular, and the debate that we are going to look at today, is about the heads of states. Let me bring it up. This one, okay? That the head of state should always be directly elected by the people and not selected by parties or parliaments. So this is one aspect of a political system. The representative, the head of the state, so this could be a president, it could be a prime minister. It's often like in a republic, it's a president. And whether or not that person should be elected directly by everyone, or should that person be indirectly elected. That means you elect your parties, you elect your regional representatives. I choose who I want to represent my municipality or my district, and then that person gets to choose the president, or that person gets to choose someone who then gets to choose the president. Okay? So you have direct elections in countries like France or in Indonesia for the president. You have indirect elections like in America, where you choose the House of Representatives, and then they end up, the number of votes that they have will go to the Electoral College, and then that person, whoever gets the most Electoral College votes, becomes the president, right? In Westminster-style systems, it's also indirect, like in the UK. I choose the party, and then the parties in Parliament will choose the Prime Minister. Usually, this person is chosen before the elections happen, so people already know, right? And that's one argument that you will hear in this debate, that even during the time of elections, even though you're not directly electing this person, you kind of know who's going to be. So your vote for the regional representative is an approval of whoever will eventually be the president or prime minister when they win. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Briefly, the contentions in this debate, it's basically a debate about democracy, right? Whether or not it leads to a better or a worse democracy. And remember, the contention, the balance here is representation and function, and representation and ideas of the democracy. Can people's voice be represented, versus the efficiency, functioning output of the democracy. And any system needs to balance these two things. If you have too much of one and not enough of the other, the system doesn't really work very well for everyone. Okay? So the major contentions in this debate, I think there are two. One is this idea of indirect versus direct democracy. Is it possible? Is it still a real democracy? And when should you do this direct and indirect, right? And when is it possible to do this direct and indirect? So this is about that balance in the democracy. The second contention, I think, is about the role of the head of state himself or herself. This is a special position that needs to have a direct election, perhaps, one could argue, because this person is representing people, they are a symbol of the nation, or is this person a manager more than anything else, right? Because they manage the differences between parties and people. They're like the CEO of a company. And if they are the CEO, then maybe they should be chosen by the people in the company or the board of directors. Not everybody, because if you choose someone that they can't work with, then the company is going to fail, right? That the government's not going to progress. Okay, so I think that's the second contention, the role of the head of state and what exactly this role constitutes. Okay, but let's not get ahead of ourselves again too much. Those are just the major sort of contentions. Let's get into arguments. Let's start with government. Okay, so I think on government you have three possible lines of argumentation. Well, probably more, but I think these are the three most common, the three major lines of argumentation. The first one is about the democracy, whether you can have a direct or indirect democracy, and on government you want a direct democracy, right? You're very pro direct democracy people. Secondly, you're going to discuss the importance of the president or the head of state and why this person is a national symbol and therefore requires this kind of direct election. And thirdly, you can talk about the problems of doing it in an indirect fashion, of allowing the parties to do it. You'll show how there are harms, right? So let's look at these things with a little bit more detail. So firstly, the direct democracy. You, on government, are a big fan of direct democracy. You think this is, whenever possible, people should have a direct role, that things can get lost when it's indirect, when you choose someone else to do something else, okay? And you think that this system upholds the direct democracy. It gives individuals a role to play in the democracy. It makes them care about it. People are capable of doing it. People deserve this right. So you talk about how people are educated and aware. And even if, in a country where it's very diverse, it's something simple that people can do. And it makes people more interested in their democracy and their functioning of it, brings them closer to their leadership, all of these different benefits of having a direct democracy, right, for this role. The second thing is, talk about this role. Don't just say democracy is good, but why specifically this time? Because even on Gov, you don't think we should have referendums every single day, right? I admit, a country can be huge. Indonesia is like more than 300 million people spread across thousands of islands, yet they vote directly for the president. But why? Because the president is special. The president is a very unique person, right? Because this person is the symbol of the nation. This person represents everybody in the country. This person is the flag bearer of my nation, my identity, my national, concept is represented in this person. It's a national symbol, right? But more than that, this person, you think, also helps create balance in the system. It's a check against the legislature, because I'm voting for those people differently. Now, if I vote for the legislature and the parties, and they pick the president, they're going to pick someone which they want, which they like, right? Which means that all of them think the same way. All of them are friends, and all of them are really, really tight with each other, and they go to each other's houses for dinners. So they're not going to disagree with each other that much. If they want to do something bad or corrupt or benefits a certain group of people over a large group of people, and you can argue that there are these class differences in politics, right? Then they're going to help themselves, not going to contradict or argue against themselves. But if I choose a president who is different from the party members, then there is a little bit of a check and balance, because they have different goals. And this helps the people, because then more views get represented and they are forced to compromise in order to do things. Okay, so this is why the president is a really special position. Not only is this person an incredibly powerful symbol of the nation, one that deserves direct election of the people, but this person serves as a check against the legislature. Okay. Now, the third reason on Gov why you support this is that you don't like the ideas of parties doing it. And I alluded to some of this stuff already, right? So parties collude among each other. They have their own internal decision-making process. They have favors which they trade off against each other. They're like, you vote for me this time, I'll vote for you next time. Hey, come on, man, we're buddies. Cut me some slack. You helped me a lot when I was just a young party member discovering my ideology, so now I will help you back. There's all of these different things that go on in parties that people don't really know about, right? So the decision is not as transparent as it can be, or at least it's not as transparent as having an election, an open election, where I have to campaign and tell you all my ideas, right? So we say that it's not the best way to do it, and if parties do it, people don't really have full control. The people are left to whoever the parties want. Parties can choose the person who is most senior, who helps them the most, not the person who helps the people the most, right? Or the people, or is the best symbol for the people. Those are the major arguments on the government side, how it leads to, how you want a direct democracy. You think people are capable, have the right to vote independently for their leader. Secondly, talk about this leader. Why this head of state is a really unique position, both in terms of the symbolism of this role, and the check and balance that this person will play. And last but not least, what are the problems of parties doing it, okay, in their hidden, non-transparent, sneaky kind of way. Okay, so that's going to be your characterization and context on government. Now, in opposition, you're not against democracy. You're also a big fan of democracy, but you just think you need to be realistic. Okay, you need to function in an efficient way. The system is only as good as what the system can do. And on opposition, you like a little bit of balance, okay? On opposition, you also are not so hard on these party members, right? You think that they are decent people. You think they are people who want the best for the country and will do the best thing for the country, but also people who realize that if they vote someone who the country doesn't want, they're going to lose their jobs. If they choose a bad president, then people are not going to vote for them next year. So they have an incentive to do the right thing. Okay, so that's going to be your characterization on op and your priorities. The three major arguments I think that you could run on op, among many other things. First thing is to defend the indirect democracy, right? This indirect mandate, voting for someone and then that person choosing your leader. The second thing is, again, talking about the president. So just like on Gov, you want to show how this person's role is a consensus builder, is creating efficiency, is more of like a CEO and a manager, and therefore it's really important why the party members choose this role. And thirdly, talk about the problems of a direct election, having to do this all of the time and so on and so forth, okay? So let's talk about the first thing, about how this transferred mandate is a democratic process, okay? On two levels here. So I think firstly you can talk about how it's really common, it happens all the time. You choose someone, you don't know what's going to happen in the country, right? So I choose the person based on their values, I choose the person based on their characteristics, and then I trust them to make decisions for me because, natural disasters may happen. We may be negotiating a treaty, we may go to war or something which I didn't know was going to happen during the elections when I was choosing you, but afterwards you needed to do. So people do this all the time. You choose someone and you trust them to make decisions for you, okay? And this is consistent with what's happening here. But secondly, I kind of know what the end result is going to be, right? It's not like, yeah, the Electoral College chooses the president in the US, but the election is about who the president is going to be. I was voting for Obama, that's why I voted Democrat. I was voting for Romney, that's why I voted Republican, right? So it's not really true that people don't know who this person is going to be. Yeah, they give up a little direct choice in it, but they have that choice when they, as members of that party, vote for that leadership, right? So if you are a member of the Democrats, then through that process, you choose the representative of the Democrats. So there's an internal kind of democracy that happens in stages. First, we democratically elect who the leader of the party is going to be, and then we choose the party to approve who that leader of the nation is going to be. Okay, so you defend the system and show how it is democratic, right? How it is functioning, and how it's hard for you to say that it's against democratic ideas or ideals. Okay, but secondly, you talk about how this role specifically is great. It should be chosen by people in the party because the role is about how the person manages the legislature, how the person manages the nation or the country. So I need to be able to get cooperation and compromise, right? So as president, my role is, yeah, as a national symbol and to represent the people and all of these things, but it's primarily about running the country. It's primarily about getting the job done. And to get the job done, I need to do policy building, I need to bridge differences, I need to encourage cooperation, I need to have the support of the people in the legislature, in the parliament, in my party, right? And the best way for me to do that, for the people to ensure that I've done that, is for them to choose me, for them to have a discussion and then to decide which one of the individuals they think best represents them and will also best represent the nation, because there's an inherent kind of check and balance here, as I mentioned earlier. Members of the legislature and the party are not going to choose a president they think people are going to hate, right? Because then you won't vote for those people again. So you trust them to make this careful decision. Choose someone I can work with and choose someone that the people will like, right? So this check and balance argument can actually work on both sides. It just depends who you think will get the balance better, right? So on the opposition, you trust the legislature and the party members to make this balance better. You think that these politicians will choose a person from their ranks who they think leads them, but also can lead the people. On the gov side, you will think that the people make this check and balance better. They will choose someone who can lead them, but they're not going to choose someone who's going to fight with everybody all the time, who can't lead the country, who's a poor CEO, right? Because they want the country to lead too. So they will still try to make sure the government functions. The counter argument to this is that it's about how much disagreement you think is important. Okay, so on gov in this debate, you think it's good to have a little bit more disagreement. You're actually quite happy if the presidents that the people choose and the party members don't always get along, because you think that creates check and balance. On op, you think that's too much disagreement. You're going to create stalemate, there'll be deadlocks in the government, and things are just not going to get done. Okay, how you break this argument is, so one way you break this argument rather is to look at the context. Okay, if you have a specific country or a situation, you can say this is what this country or this situation needs more. It needs more efficiency, or it needs more representation, or it needs more check and balance, or you counter this with other things, right? So you can say like this role specifically is about playing this, is about this, right? So this role is about getting things done. Therefore, you need less disagreement. The check and balance can come somewhere else. Some other part can play this other role, maybe. Okay, so that's a way to break this deadlock about which side has better check and balance. What is that role supposedly or specifically there for, right? And that's the second thing. The third argument on op is, well, kind of similar to the third argument on gov, except a reverse of that argument. So on gov, you argue that the problems with parties doing it, that parties are not so transparent, that parties hide a lot of information. But on op in this debate, you say there are problems with direct elections. You can talk about feasibility issues, it takes a lot of time and money and so on and so forth, but I don't think those are the most important parts of the debate, because you sound a bit bad saying that we could have money for democracy, right? Democracy is like a big value. You can talk about how it takes up time, and maybe development is a problem if you're not using money, but I think the bigger issue is, other than efficiency and cost, is about maybe how it creates splits in people, how it's just very impractical to say that everybody should be voting for this one individual who can represent everyone, right? Because that's just impossible. It's how do you get a nation of millions of people who are all really different and have different values to choose one person to represent me? Because I can't talk to everybody. I can't make this decision. I can choose one person that represents my community, my state, right, my village, my town. I mean, even then it can be a bit complicated because I agree with my neighbor, right, Jorge. So me and Jorge disagree, but we will still eventually try to get someone. But if me and like the other 100 million people in my country, how are we supposed to agree? So choosing this one leader is going to create a more split and fractured community, because people will really disagree with someone on the other side of the country over this one individual. It's much better to choose your own representative and then get your representative to discuss it with the representatives of other places. And that way you lead to a more acceptable decision for everyone, right? Because your representative can discuss actually with other representatives, and your representative can explain to you why they thought this person best represented him or her and therefore best represents you, okay? So that's the last argument you could possibly run on op, the problems of direct elections for this role and this person in this context. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the second theme in our larger theme about debating on politics, and that is debates about political systems. These are systems that have a huge impact upon you, so I hope you enjoy debating them.